Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Wallace, as you guys know, and this is our President-elect sharing session. And I want to remind you all that we are recording today's session so that we can share it with people that are unable to attend. This is an opportunity to share ideas and get feedback from your colleagues across the country. Feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself to ask a question or share at any time. And if you wouldn't mind, in your box where your name is, you can right click and add your chapter or your state. That would be super helpful for those that want to know where you're from. So thank you so much again for joining today. A couple of topics from people that have submitted things prior to today's session. So one of the questions that came up was about financials and just how people manage their financials, just looking for input as far as comparisons on your financials. So if anybody has any thoughts on that. Do you use a system? Do you use QuickBooks? Do you do everything?
Yeah, Chris, we use QuickBooks down here. I think we just upgraded to Intuit QuickBooks, and they're learning as they go using the help from the Philippines, I guess. But yeah, QuickBooks has been good for us. We go over our monthly financials every month at our board meeting, treasury support, and so forth.
So Crystal, we use QuickBooks as well, but we have a third party that does our financials for us and then reviews them with the treasurer. And then we actually have an executive committee that goes over the financials in detail. And then the treasurer does a report for the whole board, just a broad overview, and ask for any questions or input. So they get kind of scrubbed a variety of different ways.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. If you're able to have somebody, a third party, do it, it kind of keeps everything clean. I know that isn't possible for all of our chapters, but if it is, strongly recommended. You guys, as far as your statements themselves, do you, I'm assuming everybody has some sort of chart of accounts. How detailed, I know some chapters get really detailed on that, and some are like sponsorship. And it's all the sponsorships in the world in that line item. And then I've seen other chapters where break it out by all different types of stuff. How do you guys handle that?
Ours is by event, so every event is listed separately. Yeah. And
what if it's not an event? Is it just kind of a general category, like for administrative or?
Yeah, I mean, if it's like for the marketing plan for general, well, like for the newsletter, we have revenue. All the events have separate revenue, and then expenditures is admin, office lease, or coded to the event. So it's actually specific by whatever item it is. So it's all detailed.
Yeah, we do the same too. I mean, especially our large ones, we break out the golf or expos. We have social mixer events and a certain thing, but we break out the big ones because we collect a lot of revenue to offset those expenses as well.
At the chapter leadership training, we did have a template for your financials. If anybody else has a system that they think is awesome, that would be an additional sample template for your financial reports, we'd love to add that to our stuff. I also wanted to mention that, Kelly helped me out here with dates, probably a few months ago, we did a financial survey for the chapters.
Correct.
We actually did an initial one in August of last year to see how the chapters were being affected by COVID. And, people were very anxious at that time. The CDs were very anxious about how the financials were going to come out. So we did it again a year later, or almost a year later, to see how people felt they came out of that. We're just about finished compiling those results to give you all some good comparisons. So we'll make sure we include the presidents on that as well, so you can see how you fare compared to other chapters in your region or your size, etc. Okay. Is Nicole on the line? I don't see Nicole. All right. What other item did anybody come today with a burning question or information that they wanted to share? You just came to see my smiling face. Okay, well, it's a good thing I came prepared with a couple of other items, and that might trigger you guys as well. Oh, Ed, go ahead, Ed.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Hope everybody is too. Good to see a lot of faces I was able to get acquainted with at the event in Las Vegas, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for that. With regard to strategic planning, we're gonna, here it comes, the fall, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to be working on a strategic plan for next year. And I think last year we did that in November, past couple of years. And the question was, would you be participating in that as you've done in the past? Should we invite you? Will you invite yourselves?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So many of you have seen Kelly or myself or Emily or Karen at your chapters in the past facilitating strategic planning. We've continued to do that during the pandemic virtually. At this point, it's kind of a discussion to see where we're going, what the situation is. Everything's different in different parts of the country. So some of them will continue to do virtually. Some of them we will probably be comfortable in coming in person. So definitely invite us. And that goes for not just strategic planning, but like if you're having a trade show, we may be able to come or participate, or if you're having a virtual luncheon and you want somebody to attend, we'd love to participate. So still do include us on those kind of things. We definitely want to get back out there and see people as in a safe way, where it permits. We are actually updating our chapter visit request form, which your chapter executive directors are familiar with, which kind of gives us more information about an event before we go into it. And we're adding some virtual things on there, which we haven't had pre-COVID, and we just kind of, played it by ear during COVID. So we're going to solidify some of those things. So Ed, let us know when it is, and we'll see if Kelly, if we can make that work for Kelly to come up there. If not, if it's possible, she could also participate virtually.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I just encourage everybody, to, dedicate that time and energy to a strategic plan for the year. It just helps everything make sense, particularly in these times of change. It becomes a ready barometer to measure where you are month by month. And I recommend it very highly.
Thank you.
So,
and like I said, we can facilitate those sessions, but we can also, if you are a really great facilitator, or your CD is a great facilitator and always does it, that's great too. But we'd love to just sit in, like I sat in on one last week with Alexandra in LA and just listened in, and it was great because I wouldn't have been able to go otherwise because it's in LA and I'm in Virginia. But and I've never had the opportunity to do that. And Alexandra did a fantastic job, and I was able to just listen and kind of take in some ideas and add in a couple of comments when necessary. So even those opportunities are great for us to hear what's going on, so we can share with other chapters, or kind of, if we're already working on it, give you input as well. Okay, great. All right. So one thing that came up probably 3 or 4 weeks ago with the executive directors on their call was mandating vaccines at events. And things changed so quickly. On that call, everybody was like, oh God, no, we're not doing that. We don't want to handle that. Like, that's just a lot of work and nobody wants to submit all that stuff. And lo and behold, last week, I got notifications that 2 chapters were mandating vaccines. So things change, and like I said, they're different in different parts of the country. So I just kind of want to get a feel from you guys. Is that something you guys are talking about? And if you are, like, how do you plan to handle that? Because that's kind of a bit of an undertaking as well.
This is Nathan in San Diego. We had that discussion at our last board meeting. We held a special executive committee meeting to discuss that. And really, we are not going to be doing that moving forward. We decided to establish policies that say our chapter will follow CDC, state, local, and federal guidelines as they come out. So that's our policies, that we're going to follow whatever the local standards are. So if the local standards change to require vaccinations, then we will adjust and accommodate.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you, Nathan, for sharing. Alexandria?
We did similarly to the San Diego chapter, and the Greater Los Angeles chapter established guidelines that basically say the same. We will follow whatever local guidelines there are. However, we're gearing up for our first in-person luncheon on September 22nd, and our venue is requiring proof of vaccine or a negative COVID test taken within the last 72 hours. So we are basically just following whatever guidelines the venues have in place. And this is not unique to this particular venue. Here in Los Angeles, a majority of the places where we would typically hold our events, they are requiring proof of COVID vaccine in advance of the event. So people have to pre-register and provide proof prior to the event.
So that's interesting. I have a question about that, if you know. So to me, if the venue is requiring it, then they're responsible for administering that. So is that a separate process outside of registration, or is your staff collecting that information and passing it on?
So we are required to provide our list of attendees several days in advance. So people, again, must pre-register, and they are required to bring their government-issued ID as well as their vaccine proof or proof of a negative test to the event. So if they do not have those documents, they will be turned away.
And then somebody there will review that documentation, and they're responsible for that. Somebody at the hotel, not your staff.
Yes. Yes,
Got it.
That's my understanding. I hope that's the case.
How many people do you usually have at a luncheon?
Between 100 to 200, but we're expecting, we've reduced capacity for this event. So, and we're holding it on an outdoor patio. And even with the outdoor patio, the vaccines are still required. So I'd say we'll probably have nowhere above 80 for this first event.
Okay. Yeah, we did our first one outside, went really well. We're having another Friday, which is at the zoo, and it is indoor. And we're following the mandate of, mask. We're passing out hand sanitizer, that type thing. But it's going to be interesting to see if we get cancellations and how many.
Yeah, I don't think I've talked to you all since conference, so I can share a little bit of that information from conference. So some of you were there, some of you participated virtually. For those that were there, you know that there was an indoor mask mandate in Las Vegas, so everybody was required to wear masks, and they were very adamant with security. Like, they came into the education sessions, they came into the staff office, etc. And if people weren't complying with that, they were asked to comply, and our staff were told that people weren't complying and to remind people. We had our largest event, or maybe second largest. It was the largest event ever, which was surprising to some of us, given the circumstances, with over 1,300 attendees, and then we add in exhibitors and their reps. It was closer to 1,800 people. We had less than 50 cancellations. So I don't know what that percentage is, but somebody can do the math, and that is a very low number of cancellations that we did have. So I think sometimes it's just helpful to know, how you're comparing to different parts of the country. But for having to fly, a lot of people having to fly to Las Vegas, I thought that was a really low amount of people to cancel for that kind of event. So it's interesting. So Alexandria, you may be surprised. Your event may be bigger than what you think.
I wasn't surprised with the great turnout in Vegas. What we're seeing here in Los Angeles is people are deterred from registering because of the restrictions. So I expect that if people are willing to jump through these requirements, they'll show up.
Yeah.
They just won't register if they're not comfortable doing so.
You have to worry about fake vaccination cards. I was listening to on the news earlier today. There's now these police officers that refuse to be vaccinated to have these fraud vaccination cards. So that's a whole nother obstacle.
Yeah, well, that's why it's so interesting to me to see how people are handling it if it's required. I like that it's the venue in LA's case, because that takes it off of the chapter, and that reduces the liability for that as well if somebody does get sick. So I'm glad to hear it's the venue.
I can tell you we had our annual expo on August 11th, just before conference, and we only had one booth cancellation out of concern of the virus, which actually was FSR, the largest management company.
Yeah.
I think they just made it mandatory to cancel all the expos, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was a great turnout. We have an expo this Friday down in the Florida Keys. We're looking forward to a decent turnout there, considering the space down there. But still holding events, still holding in-person events. We had a great breakfast education seminar. I had about 50 people there. So it's down here. It's a different story. I mean, people just don't care.
Yeah, Florida's a little different. I mean, and not just Florida. There's other states too that are a little bit. Georgia, Kelly's saying, yeah, a little different here too. I don't know if there's anybody from Texas, but Texas is a little different too. So I mean, that's the interesting part, I think, for all of us to come together is it's different depending on where you're at.
Does National have a stance on that, on mandatory vaccinations, or is it just like follow CDC guidelines and do what you want per market?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, like I said, that we only had the mask at conference. We didn't require any vaccine. We did talk about that. We do have 2 national events, yet smaller events coming up here at the end of the month. One is our large scale managers workshop, and one is our CEOMC.
Down here.
The COMC is in South Florida, down by Steve. So they don't have a whole lot of requirements. We aren't requiring anything at that point. We're just encouraging people, safe protocols, etc. Same thing here. In, the large scale managers workshop is in Virginia, and we're just following protocols. We don't have a mask mandate here in Virginia, but I'm certain there's going to be people that are more comfortable with masks. We're in close spaces, we're going to require masks, that sort of thing. But no, we don't have anything for our staff, though. It was just announced recently that in coming back into the office, we have a staff of 57 people total, and we will be required to show proof of vaccination or regular COVID testing after starting November 1st. So.
November 1st.
Yep, November 1st. Okay. Nicole, did I see you come on from Keystone? Hi, Nicole.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
So Nicole sent me an interesting idea that that she wanted to share and just get some feedback on. So Nicole, you want to go ahead and explain what you had shared with me earlier?
Yeah, so it's something that we've been kicking around with some business partners for a little while now. And it keeps getting put on the back burner just because there's other hotter topics. But in light of some of the recent weather situations, and even in light of like some of the riots and things of that nature, when the local restoration companies are, for lack of a better term, sorry for the pun, like swamped or underwater, when an emergency hits, like right now, we've had areas in New Jersey that got hit with tornadoes and flooding, areas in Pennsylvania that got hit with flooding, and we have a lot of the same business partners between the 2 chapters, and they're scrambling. And so we were thinking it would be great if we could have some sort of communication between chapters, a little subgroup maybe that has direct communication in a situation like this. So if we have a direct relationship with Connecticut and Chesapeake, then we have two chapters that maybe have not been affected by the event that we could call on that group, and they could have resources at their fingertips, like something that's established a little bit ahead of time, so that they can say, hey, you know what, I'm going to put it out to our group and see if anybody can come up and help you guys during this time. Even if it's just volunteers that are kind of trained to be able to help, whether it's bringing water, supplies, just helping to be a go-to, helping maybe even to get like the little things, like if kids lost their favorite teddy bear, just something to even bring smiles to people's faces, but just to relieve a little bit of that pressure off of the managers and off of those associations during that time. And if we have it like inter-chapter, we can even feed off of each other, help with preparedness and education and things of that nature. But we were messing around calling it the multi-chapter emergency coalition. So the MCEC is what we've been calling it, but something where we just are a phone call away from helping to get extra hands into the region to help. And if we had a point of contact in each, then it's really one phone call that's being made instead of a million different phone calls being made. And it can also take the pressure off of the chapter staff that might be getting calls as well. So it was just kind of a thought that we wanted to put out there and see if anybody else thought that it was a positive idea and maybe would want to chat about it either offline or on a different meeting or whatever the case might be, to see if we could get something kind of in motion.
Anybody have any? Alexandra put in the chat that she loves the idea. So something, it kind of sounds like FEMA, which is a great way to share resources. Any other thoughts from other chapters?
I think it's a great idea. I actually work for a restoration company, and we had a storm last night, and honestly, I was wondering if I was going to make it to this call today. So I think it's a wonderful idea if we can have, states that are adjacent to one another and be able to kind of rely on one another when we need to. We are covered up in the Atlanta area with restoration companies. They're on every corner. But that being said, the ones that are part of CAI, the country, they're, see, I'm telling you something right now. My air conditioning's out here. I'm in
oh God.
CAI trying to get in here. I'm sweating. It's bad. But I think that we have someone you can rely on, because a lot of these companies are fly by night. We don't want to, pick up the phone and call. And then when your competitors in CAI, I feel like you do have a really great relationship. However, you can't really depend on one another when it comes to something like that. You have to be able to have a resource outside of your hometown, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Absolutely. Because if you're hit hard, your competitors hit hard too, if it's a geographic natural disaster type thing.
Yes,
so
yes.
Getting somebody that's even a few hours away, they may be able to
make
help.
all the difference.
Yeah.
And we've done that in the past with a company, and when it's been large floods, but I know it's something that my company would be interested in. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, we have all the restoration companies down here. Of course, there's a new one that pops up every week. They're all in Louisiana now. They mobilize to Louisiana.
Yep.
And that opens up a whole different can of worms. Is, in Pennsylvania, people were probably like, hey, we can go down to Louisiana and, it's not going to affect us. And it came up and it like obliterated a couple areas in our territory. But now all those people are down in Louisiana helping Louisiana. So it just helps when the unforeseen comes up, and we hope that we'll never actually need to make calls to each other, but just to know you could pick up the phone and say, hey, I need somebody, and I don't want to call like to Kelly's point, I don't want to call my competition. Yeah, they're great and I want them to survive too, but I want to call somebody that's outside of my territory that's coming out to help and get it done, and then they go home.
Right. I think it's great.
The problem is when you have like a Hurricane Harvey that hits Houston, and so everybody mobilizes to go there, then a week later Irma hits Florida and we can't get equipment back over here, and then you have too many That was a big issue down here at that time.
Are you guys, is that something you do? You deploy to?
All the restoration companies that we have a lot of them that are good business partners, and they have trailers and they'll deploy from Texas all the way around the Gulf Coast area.
We do not any longer. So that's really good. I mean, we would definitely help a neighboring state, but we no longer deploy to go all over. We would be to the whole Southeast Texas, everything from Georgia. Now we're just so much business here. So we definitely would need to have somebody to call on.
Yeah.
Cotton Restoration is actually based in Texas. They're big down here too. They're growing.
Yeah.
So they're the contact from down here. She's in Louisiana right now, in New Orleans, sending pictures.
Okay, well, Nicole, I think that to me, I'm getting the sense that it's something that we should explore a little bit more. I know you said you had a couple of companies that you were already talking with, so perhaps if anybody's interested in talking with Nicole, if you can put your email in the chat, and Nicole can reach out to you and see if we can have a broader conversation about how we could do this.
Thank you.
Thank you for the idea. I appreciate that. Nicole, do you mind if I share what you just asked me earlier this week about the manager?
Sure.
Okay. I just loved this idea. So Nicole sent me an email on Tuesday that she had seen a post on LinkedIn from a manager in her market that had shared that she was very upset that her certificates from CAI classes and designations were destroyed because of flooding. They were all like the ink had run down because of water damage and whatnot. So Nicole had reached out to me saying, hey, is there any way that you can send me certificates so I can get them framed to replace them for her? And I just thought that was such an awesome little gesture. And so I'm just sharing that as something that you might want to consider, because we all have disasters and things that happen in our markets. But something so simple, and the manager doesn't know yet, but I'm sure she's going to be so thrilled at the idea that that's one thing she doesn't have to contact CAI about. Somebody took care of that for her, and she can hang those on her wall again when the building's repaired. So I just thought that was very kind, Nicole. Thank you for doing that. Okay, other topics you guys want to chat about? Okay, well, I have one other topic that I had on my list, and that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you guys probably saw I sent out a message about a week ago saying the Board of Trustees had adopted a DEI statement for the organization. Kelly's just put a link in the chat for you all if you hadn't seen it yet. And part of this initiative is that we're seeking out other chapters, companies that have these kinds of initiatives to kind of figure out what we're doing. If you've tried to tackle this initiative either personally or professionally, it's a lot, and it's a lot to figure out what connects with your broader audience and how to educate people and learn yourself about these issues. So I'm just wondering if any of you chapters out there, or perhaps in your company, if you've had any discussions, if you've explored any kind of initiative. Okay.
Crystal, this is Mary Hawk. After you sent it out, I've got it on my to-do list.
Awesome, that's great. So we're gonna so this is kind of my very loose plan here. We're gonna keep encouraging chapters to adopt a statement. I'm gonna gather people. I'm gonna have a blog post go out here shortly in the next few days talking about it and asking people if they're interested in participating and to share ideas, etc. So And then we're going to just kind of take it from there to see where it goes, to see what kind of impact we can make on the organization as a whole. I think it's, for me, when you look around at all of our different communities, they're so incredibly diverse, whether it be by ability or age, gender, race, religion, all of those different categories of people, if you want to put people in categories. But but if you look at us right here, we're all kind of the same, you know, in a lot of ways. So, you know, how do we reach out beyond our leadership and get to our membership to encourage a more inclusive community? So that's kind of where we're headed. I'm not sure, you know, exactly how we're going to get there, but we welcome everybody's ideas there. Ed, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yes, Crystal, I do. We adopted a kind of a policy in last year regarding civil rights and housing. And when I saw the statement that you had forwarded, I immediately sent that over to Vicki, and we've got that on our October agenda for discussion.
Awesome.
I think, you know, it is important. Personally, I believe that it's of critical importance that we recognize issues and do something with them. I think when we talk and act, then we will facilitate change. I watched at National for signs. You know, how are we doing in terms of inclusiveness? I was encouraged by what I saw at National. I think that people are comfortable with each other, and that was great. I also went to the civil rights presentation, which was wonderful. So that's
Right.
what we're doing in Michigan on that. And thank you for sending the statement from National on that.
Sure. I also just put in the chat another link, which has some other resources that we've put together at CAI over the last several months that I think are really interesting reads and have some good information. So I encourage you to take a look at that as well. Actually, Nicole and Mary, are you in West Florida? Is that right, Mary Hawk?
Yes, West Florida.
West Florida. Okay, so I know both. Actually, I don't know if it's Keystone or New Jersey. It might be New Jersey. Have young professionals committees. So I'm also going to be picking brains on that too. And Steve, you do as well. So you know, I think that's part of this too, is getting our young professionals involved. So you know, if you have any type of program on that that I'm not aware of, let me know, because I think that's an important component of this. Okay, both New Jersey and Pennsylvania have young professional committees. So one thing when we've
I'm going to point out that I put young YP task, young professional task. We're talking about this, so just great minds alike. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. You know, it was very important to me when we started talking about this, that it was, you know, inclusivity across all different underrepresented groups. So not, you know, a lot of this started with race, and that tends to be the most talked about group, but there's so many more groups that we need to consider as far as age and ability and religion and various things like that. So so definitely the young professionals would qualify in there as well. Okay,
we just started our young professionals group, and they're kicking. I mean, they've already set up a beach cleanup day and some other stuff that they're working on. It's very exciting. So I'm happy to let you know how that's working after a couple more months. But yeah, I'm excited about what they're bringing to the table.
I feel like with the young professional groups that I'm aware of, they're very focused on the community and community service, which I think is a great way to bring people together and, you know, for a common cause. So yeah, you know, keep me posted for sure.
Can I ask a silly question?
No, go ahead.
What are the parameters for the young professionals group?
Steve, what's considered a young professional?
Anybody under the age of 35, that's obviously industry related, that has 2 to 3 years experience in this industry. It is a fresh outlook, you know, when you're talking about keeping up with the trends. And today, I mean, we just hired a new CED, and she's in that area. Like, she was part of that young professionals startup group, and she was handling all of our social media, and it's just, our social media is just like a whole new light, a godsend, if you will, something was hoping to get off moving forward this year, and she's done a great job. So, right now it's just the age limit and just years of experience in the industry that we have. They're trying to grow, and they don't limit the number of people on that committee. So, and I attend the committee meetings just so in case I have any questions, so me and the CD will attend, and it's just refreshing to see some fresh ideas and other than the same old things year after year. So I'm very excited about the direction that's going.
Mary,
I'm sorry.
I think ours is 40, under 40.
Okay.
Well, the median age here is like 80, so under 40 is young. But one thing I did remember when we started it is people thought you had to be a young professional to attend the young professionals events. And so we had to make it very clear that the young professionals were putting on an event, and a lot of the young professionals would attend the events, but I'm pretty sure this is right, the events were still open to everyone, so that it didn't seem too, exclusive. But
I love that.
Yeah, they've done a great job, and we've made sure everyone understands that anybody. I mean, it was kind of a joke. Well, I can't go to that because I'm out, over 40. But they started just opening them up, and anyone goes to them. But they've done a great job.
I will say we actually created a specific logo for them. So we're doing a beach cleanup brought to you by CAI's YP professionals, or the Young Professionals Group. So we just did a logo using the CAI colors and the CAI logo. So that kind of separates themselves, same as we did as the CAI Gives Back. We did a special logo for that. And then we just launched a nomination for to help membership growth, for a young professional in our magazine, in our quarterly magazine. So young professional of the quarter, and do a spotlight on that young professional as they're growing in this industry and succeeding. So hopefully that'll get more attention, and that'll drive membership a little from that aspect.
Hey, Steve, I just sent you a chat too, if you will check that, because I want to get some of these ideas and run with something we have discussed as well. However, we do have CAI Cares, and we don't want to step too much on their toes, because I think that's been a little bit of the concern, and maybe get some ideas of other things that you're doing that we can kind of maybe gear away from a little bit on just more young professionals and having a group events and getting to know each other. And a lot of it's for membership drive as well for us.
And you
I
have to be
in the magazine. That's really good.
And you have to be careful, because I have a Broward events committee and a Miami-Dade events committee, and if young professionals are planning an event, you don't want to step on their toes. And
Right.
Something I said, this is a great idea. Why don't you work together with the Broward events committee, and you guys, bring the details to the board members so we can approve it and move forward. So that kind of was a little rocky in the beginning, but we got ironed that out really quick, and it was kind of like, okay, so yes, it's an event. Like, we're doing a Halloween event, right? We're doing a costume contest. And it's actually a place called 27 Bar here in Fort Lauderdale, but we're doing it on the 27th of October. So we're like 27 on the 27th, and costume contest and all that fun stuff. And then they worked on this, and the young professionals worked on this, and we touched base with the Broward Events Committee, and they were like, oh yeah, we could do this too, this, that, and then now we're rolling out with it. So it's just one of those things. Stepping on toes is a concern, because they're very active and very quick, as opposed to when we get to it, type of mentality. It's completely different.
Yeah, they move very quickly. Yeah. The other kind of group that I've seen, and Lauren, I know you're on here, but you're en route, so I'll speak for you, and hopefully don't say everything correctly. So the New Jersey chapter had they have a women's group, and they had a conference specific to women, and anybody could attend, but I sat in on part of it myself. And they had different women in the industry talk about getting involved in the industry, rising through your company at different levels, self-care, just, you know, women's related issues in the industry. And they used all speakers from all or most within CAI. And I thought that was a great way to do that. We have so many women that have become CEOs of their companies and, you know, in these leadership positions, and to share that also with younger women, I think is very powerful too.
Crystal, I'm on the call and I can talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
We have had our Women's Leadership Committee, which we established at the beginning of last year, right before the pandemic. And we had planned to kick off with a very big in-person retreat with all kinds of speakers and presentations and whatnot. And that was unfortunately changed to virtual, which was, that was probably one of the biggest successful events we had during the entire virtual aspect of the pandemic last year. And we did have one program in particular that was very well received, which was a panel of female leaders in the industry. And they had talked about their own experiences coming up, you know, from the very beginning of their careers all the way up to where they are now. And it was very off, you know, it wasn't scripted at all. It was really them just talking about themselves. And I have to say that was probably one of the best received programs that we had in that entire retreat, which virtually it was done over the course of 3 days during a week's time. And we had a lot of programming, but that event in particular really stood out. And we did the same thing actually on a legislative update level also, where we had the female leaders coming in and talking about legislative updates impacting the industry. I think when we had women, and again, it was open to everyone. It wasn't just open to women, but we had women talking about their own experiences in the industry. That really was very well received by everyone who attended.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, there's a great women's group down here called WW, Women Empowered Women. And a lot of our members are part of that group. So I try to reach out. Like I just spoke to the person who organizes that to do combined events. Like if we're doing charitable events, you know, join CAI and WU to do this, you know, rather than reinvent the wheel within CAI. They already have it.
Cool. That's great. That's great. You know, one thing that was brought to my attention during conference that I hadn't thought about that I want to do better at is at our conference in Las Vegas. Many of you may have noticed we had a wellness lounge and some wellness initiatives, and one of them was a walker tracker. So you track your steps, and whoever had the most steps got a prize. And somebody said, hey, what about those people that have trouble walking? How can we include them? And, you know, I was like, oh, that is such a valid point. And so, you know, health and wellness is becoming a, you know, a big, well, it has been for a while, but I feel like during the pandemic kind of re-engaged a lot of people in that kind of stuff. And so that's one thing too, I'm trying to keep in mind. And when you're at events, you may want to keep in mind is how are you making this accessible to everyone? So just sharing that food for thought as well.
And I wanted to say, Crystal, I'm going to try to copy the one thing that you did with the, you had a sponsor for a small area that had like healthy snacks.
Yep.
Except they ran out of bananas right away. But I'm always looking for the place with the healthy snacks and not the donuts and ice cream and stuff. And
Yep.
to have someone sponsor that, it went over really well, I thought, that
That's
little
great.
area that you had.
Thank you for that feedback. Yeah, it was, for those of you who weren't there, the Managers Council, which is a advisory council under the Board of Trustees, had this health and wellness initiative. And so we said, hey, why don't we just bring it to conference? And so we had healthy snacks, we had massage chairs, they had a resource brochure, you know, with different resources on mental health, physical health, and just work-life balance, and then had the walker tracker challenge. And thank you, Mary, for that positive feedback. I've heard nothing but positive. And then that hey, what about us, which was incredibly valid and useful. So and it was sponsored. One Brightview sponsored the whole package to do that. So that was fantastic. So a sponsorship idea for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Going forward. Yeah, because you're right, Mary. There's many people that, you know, want to skip the ice cream and that kind of stuff. So to have an alternative is really great. Okay. Any other comments for today? All right. Well, good conversation as usual. I appreciate everybody coming on today. As I noted in the beginning, this has been recorded, so we will share the link with you in a few days if you want to go back and relook at something or share with your president or president-elect if they were unable to be on the call. So again, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great day.